A couple of weeks ago, I did a pre-production breakdown of my ice hockey mini doc, one goal. I promised a behind the scenes breakdown as well, so let's jump right into it.
This looks like dog shit right now, but that's what we're writing.
Ready, action. Well, I was wearing a bunch of hats on this project. My main primary role was the director. So that means handling all things creative, from the storyboard to working with the DP to shot list to directing talent to communicating with the rest of the crew to actually make the thing happen. Our crew on this project was absolutely all time, especially our department heads, our director of photography, Liam Nielsen Schultz, our gaffer, Karsten Schlag, and our producer slash assistant director Colin Gearing. So I was able to sit down with all those guys and kind of chat through each of their roles on the project and give you a little bit of insight into each of their jobs. So let's chat with Liam first about camera and lensing.
So the camera that we were rocking with is the red Komodo right here. We shot everything in just regular ProRes 422. No need to get crazy with it. We had full control over the scene, so no need for RAW. The lens that we were using was the Sigma 18-35, and then we had a little bit of an unconventional choice with that one. We put the SLR Magic rangefinder in front of it. Usually this would be used if you're shooting with an anamorphic lens, where you have a double lens setup with both the taking lens and then the projection lens on top of it. Then you would end up with a double focus system. With a rangefinder, you can put it in front of that, and then it turns a double focus system like that into a single focus system. We, of course, weren't shooting anamorphic. However, I think the SLR Magic rangefinder adds a really nice character to the look of it. It makes warm tones a little bit warmer, and then it makes the cool tones a little bit cooler. It adds a little bit of blue to the shadows, and then it also adds those nice blue flares that you saw. Whether or not you think those are nice is up to you, but I thought they looked pretty good.
So pretty much the first thing we tackled on day one was the interview. Like I mentioned in my pre-production breakdown, having a list of questions and topics is super, super helpful as a director when you're going into an interview. Interviews themselves can be kind of tough sometimes, especially when you're working with non-actors and it's the first thing you're doing on day one of production. Kind of getting your subjects to open up and talk to a camera can be difficult. Luckily, all the guys we interviewed were either one of my coaches or one of my teammates, so kind of keeping things light and joking around sort of set the tone for everyone. Side note on that point, I think as a director, you're not only in charge of the creative, like I said, but you also have to be a leader on set. And setting the tone is just one aspect of that leadership. You also have to be able to communicate with your crew. You have to be able to delegate tasks. You have to be able to make decisions and be decisive and confident, even when you're not. And I think a lot of times that aspect of directing can get overlooked. I think as a director myself, where maybe I lack in a little bit of the creativity, I can make up for in the leadership aspect. It's definitely something I'm working on both sides, but I think it's important to try and have both for sure. It was also sort of funny when a lot of the hockey guys came to set. I think they were a little bit caught off guard by all the 8x hung up, the lights everywhere, the Komodo that was completely rigged out. A lot of them were sort of like, you weren't kidding around with this project. It's always kind of funny to see people's reactions when they haven't been around an actual film set. Anyway, I'll let Liam take it away with a proper breakdown of the lighting setup for our interview.
Yeah, the interview shot was probably our most complex as far as like what we needed to actually bring into the room. The room looked like shit. It looked terrible. There was, I mean, like, it was super flat. There was not a lot of dimension to it. Just kind of like brutal overheads that were a little bit soft, but just soft in a bad way. It made everything super flat. Everything was pretty monotone. Because of that, there wasn't a lot of contrast in those blue colors that we have. And so it just, yeah, it lacked a lot of depth. It was not a great start. So what we decided to do is we popped in little aperture MCs into every single cubby. I think we rented like 20 MCs for this, and we're also using them in other parts of the shoot as well. So we popped alternating MCs into every single one of the cubbies. Karsten knows what the he's doing with Sidus Link. I have no idea, but he got all of those programs. That way we didn't have to do every single one individually. The MCs wouldn't quite be bright enough with how we wanted the light to affect the scene. And so what we ended up doing instead was using just like Nanlite Pavo tubes. Each cubby was about almost exactly 2 feet across, which worked out really well with the 4-foot tubes. Because of this, it meant that we could stick lights kind of right in the middle of each of those 2 cubby sections. And so because of that, it made those Pavo tubes look really natural in the scene. I think Pavo tubes can be great practicals when used well, but of course, if they're not used well, then they can very much kind of look like they can create that music video look, which isn't a bad thing, but that was not what we were going for because that would not be natural in a locker room setting. Um, so we added those, kept those around probably 4,500 Kelvin to add a little bit of warmth in the scene. Then we had a aperture 200x with a softbox and a grid on it, camera right, and that was our key light for the interviews. And then we had one more 200x that was just blasting into the ceiling to add ambience. And then the last thing that we had was the Nova P300C. We had that set to 3200 Kelvin, and then we threw that in the back hallway, kind of behind that wall, right behind the subject, and that was giving us the warm light that was coming in to illuminate that family sign, and then also those hockey sticks down there. So that was our lighting for the interview.
So after getting this super complex lighting set up already, we also had to make sure that we were able to quickly transition to the next sequence, which was a much different look, a much different mood.
We did not have a lot of time in the rink, and so because of that, we had to keep this in mind and make sure to be very efficient. So in order to switch into the gear up scene, the MCs were kind of the bulk of the work that we needed to worry about. We rolled the key over to the individual cubbies, and then we turned off all of the Pavo tubes and we kept all of the MCs on. This gave us a pretty moody look, which was exactly what we were going for, and it also made it look almost like a completely different locker room, or as if you just kind of turned off the overheads or something like that. This gave us a really nice character with the mixed lighting. And then over near the trophies that are on the right side of the frame, we just dropped another MC in the background there, just kind of shooting upwards. That way we could eliminate those trophies. And it adds a nice pop for some of the side shots. Otherwise, that kind of just falls into darkness and it makes the frame feel very left heavy.
Having a plan in place beforehand helped us to quickly flip the lights into the next setup, which was a much more moody scene for the gear up portion of the video. And again, all that stuff happens in pre-production. Everything from the meetings that we had leading up to day one to the location scouts to all the lighting plans that we talked through. We knew exactly where we were going next when finishing each sequence. Our gaffer Karsten can talk to you a little bit more about all that.
So for this project, we didn't really diagram anything out. On a lot of projects, I'll either make like a diagram or the DP will make a diagram. But for this, we kind of just chat on the location scout, and this wasn't like anything crazy. So we just kind of talked about it there, and then on the day we just stuck to that plan. It was actually really really simple and really really smooth. There there was no real changes on the day versus when we decided in pre-production, which was super nice. It was super nice working with a DP who was caring about the G&E team and really stuck to what we decided on in pre-production. So a lot of times being in G&E, it's a lot of hurry up and wait. This was just hurry up and keep hurrying the up. Like there was no slowing down and waiting. So while they were shooting one scene, we were lighting the next scene. When they were done that scene, we were striking that next scene and then also lighting the next scene after that. So it was a constant moving, which I personally enjoy. I like moving around all the time. So it was a lot of fun for me.
Another great part about our team is that Karsten, like Liam, is also a very talented DP. So for all my cinematographers out there, I think Karsten brings up some really interesting points on working your way into the industry.
My career hasn't really been like through one kind of come up or another. It's been very much split between G&E and camera, and I honestly think that's really the way to do it. As a gaffer, you get a really different look at sets and the industry in general than you would if you were like kind of working your way up through the AC route. And I think it's a better way to go about it, just because you understand on a different level kind of what your G&E team you're asking them to do as a DP. Because if you haven't worked in G&E and you're a cinematographer, you may be asking for shit that just may not be possible in the time frame that you have. I've worked on jobs where we'll be a couple minutes out from rolling, and then the DP will want to do some massive lighting change, like, hey, this looks great, but can we get like a 12 by overhead just to block off that a little bit? And it's like, in reality, it's going to put us way behind. And so I think kind of working in G&E before becoming a cinematographer, or in my case, like doing it as the same time I'm also a DP, I think it's really, really beneficial, because you really understand what are your constraints and kind of how not to be an asshole to your G&E people, so they'll want to come work with you again. And so I think that's something that I've really lucked out being able to have happen in my career. So.
All right, so this last scene was definitely the most complex, at least for me as a director. Not only was I coordinating all the players, all the action happening on the ice, but for a large portion of the on-ice stuff, I was cam-opping. I was doing a lot of the shooting myself. Since I'm on the team, I know how to work a camera, but I was also the best one for the job as far as skating goes. So I was able to keep up with all the guys. Threw an easy rig on for a little bit, did some handheld, and it was a ton of fun. I had Liam in my ear, kind of guiding me through it. But yeah, also as a director, kind of doing both of those things, we definitely had specific drills and set plays that we wanted them to do to get specific actions. But at a certain point, we just decided to let the guys go play. We set up like a 3-on-3 scrimmage, and we said, just go for it. And I was weaving in and out of the action, following the puck, following guys, players whizzing by, and it was definitely fun. Our first AC, Cindy, absolutely killed it. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you have no idea where I'm going to be pointing the camera next. So she had to like figure out on the fly. She killed it. She did an awesome job. And it ended up being some of my favorite stuff that we shot in the entire project. So I'll let Liam take it away with a proper lighting breakdown.
So with the ice rink, the first thing that we did was, of course, go on the location scout, and then we kind of walked around the top a little bit, thinking about what frames we could have. We ended up deciding on one kind of as our hero shot, more or less, for the ice, with the players coming out onto the ice rink. And we were thinking that it would work well to have we were going to rent two 1200Ds in order to light the whole space. And we were going to put those up top and then kind of have the light flood down. We were also thinking that having just the 1200Ds, it would look good, but it might be a little bit boring. I don't know if boring is the right word, but we wanted to spice it up a little bit and add some tungsten lights down in the middle there. And those would be lights that would show up a lot more like in the frame. They wouldn't, or more as practicals, they wouldn't affect the lighting of the scene as much. When we got close to them, like with the goalie shots, you can definitely see them having an impact there. They had a nice warmth to the frame, and then they also help add a little bit of motivation, so that way if we come in with a warm light somewhere else, like for example when we were doing the hero shots of the players on the ice getting up close on their faces, those warm lights in the background would help the viewer think like, oh, maybe there's like other warm lights kind of all around the edge of the stadium. One of the biggest challenges that I faced as a DP on this one was just the timing of the whole thing. It was an ambitious schedule to start, and then Colin, who was producing this and was also our first AD, he killed it. As a DP, a first AD can either be your best friend or your worst enemy, and it really depends on how you want to approach it.
Like what? Yeah, so this is the, I think this is all public information. Yeah, this is the call sheet that we use for this. There's plenty of call sheet templates online. Doesn't really matter. What's important is like the schedule itself and the timing of all that, and putting the important information that's needed for a successful day on set. I think with this, the director, Pat, had so many shots that he wanted, which was great. Love the creativity, but as a producer, you're like, okay, how are we going to make that happen with the time? Because you have talent and crew for only so long, typically 10 hours. So in this case, I was like, all right, we'll make this work. We'll just schedule things very closely and just really try to get through things. And that's sort of where the schedule came in. And then on set as an assistant director, I was the one who was sort of taking that schedule and really trying to live by it. And you sort of sometimes become the bad guy because you're like, hey, like Pat, I understand you want to get this shot, but we also have to get 20 others right after that. So there's sort of like a give and take there. And I think a great assistant director is able to understand when it's okay to sort of allow time to slip a bit to get that extra shot, that extra thing that the director really wants, and other times when you really do need to move on because that can allow you to get X, Y, or Z shot that you also need. This is probably not the way you do it, and actually I know for a fact this is not the way you do it, but I think this is just thinking quick on the fly on this set. This is basically the call sheet broken down into like 10-minute intervals. Again, because we had so many different shots that we needed to get through, we had to do the player like portrait shots, hero shots, all these different shots on the ice. Because of that, I sort of just broke everything down in 10 minutes. Be like, all right, Pat, we got 10 minutes for this shot, we got 2 minutes for this shot, and just started timing everything. And by doing that, we were able to sort of get through a ton of shots very quickly. This was a great learning experience for everyone, including myself. A really fun, fast-paced set. I think if we could do it again, I think we would try to take some shots out so that we could focus more on certain ones. There is something to be said about slimming your schedule down and really focusing on certain shots, and that comes in more into pre-production, knowing exactly what you're wanting. But that way, when you're on set, you're really able to just focus and get that shot that you need.
One thing that I really learned, or a big takeaway on this shoot, was just learning to trust my gut as a DP. It's very easy to kind of sit and really ponder over different lighting decisions, but sometimes you have the AD just like breathing down your neck and is like, all right, we need something, and then eventually it gets to the point where the AD is like, okay, like, we're moving on to the next scene. It needs to be set up 10 minutes ago, so you better get it going fast. And when that happens, you really just got to trust your gut, and you got to trust your skill set and all the practice that you've put in, learning how to light things, and kind of getting that eye for your compositions and whatnot. And so that way, when you're in a time crunch, you can kind of just lean right into that. You don't have to think about it too much. You can trust what you thought about in pre-pro. You can trust those discussions that you had with the director. And then that way, when you actually get to the scene, you're in a time crunch, you can make those decisions and you don't have to worry too much about it.
So that about wraps things up. I think a few of my biggest takeaways from this entire project was that, one, you have to have a plan. Like I said in my pre-production breakdown, things are going to change on set. Having a plan in place allows you to go back to the basics. And even when you can't go back to the basics, it gives you a starting point to roll with the punches and adapt. Next is about leadership. I think in a film context, when you are the director, people look to you for decisions and being confident, being decisive, knowing what you want, but also being able to collaborate and take other people's input is super important. It was really fun to be a part of such a large project. I think this was the biggest thing that I've directed myself with so many moving pieces. It was definitely a challenge, but it was a fun challenge. And I'm super glad I kind of threw myself into it. I was super nervous going in, and yeah, you kind of just find your groove. And I think everything ends up working out. So, and then the last thing is kind of having that group of people around you that you can really trust, people that you can depend on to do their job and that you're excited and have fun working with. I am so thankful for the crew that we had on this project, especially Liam, Karsten, and Colin. They killed it. They helped me bring this whole thing to life, and I could not have done it without them. So I'm super thankful for them. So excited for the next project that we get on together. And yeah, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. I hope you find this somewhat helpful, but either way, I'll see you next time. Peace.